Hi, my name is Cathy. More than 10 years ago, an unlikely thing happened. Ross,
Hi.
a then homeless guy who lived in the woods with his dog, and Cathy, then a professor of anthropology, made a connection. And we never realized at the time that it would result in a book. A few years later, as our friendship grew, we drew in a third author. His name is Jason, a once student of mine who had worked at a homeless shelter and also had interviewed homeless day laborers for a master's thesis. Our collaboration resulted in this book. The Man in the Dog Park, Coming Up Close to Homelessness. We think you might appreciate it. And in this short video, we're going to answer 5 questions to help you decide if you would really want to read it. So let's get to it. So one of the things that people ask us when they see us together is, how did this book come about? And I think Ross can start off by telling you what happened one day.
Well, we were already friends. We'd been going to the park for a couple of years, and one day she came up to me and just asked, "How would you like to do a book together?" And I thought for a second, and I kind of looked at her funny and said, "What? You're crazier than I am."
So there's even a backstory here. I wanted to write a book because I realized how much Ross's story, after I found out more about him, and other homeless people too, had to offer the public. But I also was thinking of how far I had come since I first met Ross. I'm a little ashamed, actually, when I think of it now, because the day that I met Ross, he doesn't quite remember it, but I do, because I showed up at the dog park with my dogs, as I do every morning, and it was probably late November or mid-November, and in our dog park at that time of year, it's dark in the morning. And so when I arrived, I saw this figure kind of slumped over on a picnic table, and he had a baseball cap on, and he was just sitting there, and he didn't look up when I came to the gate, and there was no one else around, and it was still dark, kind of dusk out in the morning, and I thought, I should not go in that dog park. I don't know who this guy is, and I was afraid. So I decided I'm going to go into the park, but I'm going to stay really close to the gate, and if this guy moves, I'm out of there. And that was my first thought when I saw him. He was scary and sullen looking, and later I learned why he didn't look up.
And we learned long ago, as being homeless and whatever, that if you approach somebody, or whether rather overtly, they would become rather nervous, you'd scare them and you'd go away. So I just learned to look down and keep to myself so that I wouldn't scare everybody else.
You know, and this is part of the stigma of being a homeless person that the reader's going to learn about, and you'll see it more from a homeless point of view. Ross and my relationship runs throughout the book, but you're going to hear voices of dozens of homeless people as they share their lives and their challenges living homeless. And even though I'm an academic, and I promise it won't read like a textbook. So here's the other question that people ask, and it's important to decide whether you want to read the book. What will the reader find in the book?
You know, during the research, I took Cathy to a variety of places, where homeless people would sleep, where they met, where they go get their money, where they went to get their food, their Section 8 hearings. All these places are all in the book, and Cathy's going to walk you through each one of these items and show you what it's like to be in that situation.
Well, and I do think you're going to have a unique window into what it's like to be homeless, thanks to Ross and many of the other people who offered their stories in the book. You're going to spend a day at a shelter in Chapter 4. You're going to walk through the bureaucracy of getting help in Chapter 7, which we called Navigating the Bureaucracy. You'll see how homeless people get money. In Chapter 6, spending time with a panhandler who I love, a dear man with cancer who lives in his car. You're going to witness the challenges to work, to eat, to shower, and stay safe as a homeless person. So the other day, somebody asked me, what's the most surprising thing you learn about homelessness in your book? For me, one of the answers is how many homeless people have jobs. You won't meet our third co-author in this video, but you will in the book. And he's a younger guy who's been working for the Culinary Union in Las Vegas, and he has a life commitment to advocating for working people. And his interviews with dozens of homeless day laborers will help you understand why you see people lined up at these temp labor job sites, and also why they are taking these pay-by-the-day jobs rather than working in a regular full-time position. You'll get a chance to meet many homeless day workers in our book and hear in their own words what working day labor is like.
Another thing you'll get clearer to you is through this book and the relationship between mental illness, addiction, and homelessness. It's not what you think.
And that's a really interesting thing. We're not going to tell you until you read, but sometimes it's a different relationship than what you'd really expect, and you're going to hear what some homeless people have to say about this. I made a promise to one guy in particular that was a challenge to social workers and probation officers to stay sane and to stay sober under the conditions under which he lived. You'll see why he says this in his own words in the book.
And I think Cathy was shocked when she saw what it took for me to get cash and survive, because I can't use a bank. I got in trouble many years ago and paid the price for it, but and not being able to use a bank is one of them. So I have to go to payday loans, pawn shops, wherever you can get money at a high interest rate. It always costs an exorbitant amount for a homeless person to try to get money.
And you know, I knew very little about that until you taught me about that. These things that are called alternative financial services, and you're going to read about them in chapters 8 and 9 in the book. I think you're going to see how some of these industries, like title loans, like payday loans, like plasma donation and the pawn industry work. It shocked me to see how many were actually in my hometown. And if you look around, you can really see in your own town, the very numbers show you how lucrative these industries are. So what will the reader take away from this book? More connection, less fear. I think this has been my journey. I want to show you where I began and where I ended, and I think the takeaway for the reader is going on the ride with me and meeting the homeless people I met. If there is one insight that I got clearly, it was an appreciation for the patience and the ingenuity it really takes to live homeless. It isn't easy to live in your car or in a storage bin, or to find a safe place to sleep in the woods or in a city. It isn't easy to find a place to shower or bathe, especially when you have to go to work, or how to get out of the freezing cold or the stifling heat for even just a few minutes before you have to go outside again. It isn't easy to stay legal. Ross knows this when the shelters are full, but it's against the law to sleep inside the city limits. 6 years into our friendship, Ross had moved out of homelessness, and I asked him to reflect on the difference in his life. And the first thing he said to me is that he didn't live by his watch as much. And I thought I heard him wrong. The homeless life, you know, you're poor but you're free, you know, or some idea like that. But I didn't hear him wrong.
Yeah, because there's so many different things that you have to deal with every day. You get up, you've got to go get your first meal, you've got to go take your shower, you have to go arrange for food stamps, you have to go get your second meal. Everything is timed. If you get off your schedule just for a minute, it throws everything, your entire day gets thrown out of whack.
You know? And he made me realize a lot of things. And the second thing really that he made me realize is the very, very thin line between being poor and being homeless. Because I got to see Ross while he was homeless for many years, and then I got to see him when he wasn't homeless anymore. And do you remember what you said to me in chapter 8, which we called Home at Last, after I read back the descriptions of the incidents in your life after you had your own apartment? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I said it was like a catch-22.
Yeah.
In some ways, it felt like you just kept going in the same circle over and over and over again. You're poor, but you can't, in order to not be poor, you have to get up out of where you are, but you can't get up out of where you are because you're poor.
See what you think when you read it. So we hope one of the things that a reader would get from this book is an answer to the question, and maybe just even a felt answer to the question, what could make a difference to homeless people? We can make a difference to homeless people and we think first by using our power, our political and economic and social power to put certain issues on our radar that might not already be there.
Like affordable housing, voucher programs, prison to work, veterans to civilian transition programs. And a lot of people I know could have been helped just by there being an adequate addiction program.
Yeah. And I would add to that legislation about the alternative financial industry, like payday loans, minimum wage increases, and the decriminalization of homelessness. We do offer places in the book to go, like the National Alliance to End Homelessness website, but our book is not designed primarily as a policy book. And that's why the second point here is important too. It could make a difference to homeless people if you, me, we find a way to treat homeless people as people, even if that doesn't involve a handout.
You know, that's why in the morning after I got up out in the woods and came in to the park with my cup of coffee and just sat around, just because I wanted to be around somebody for a change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off by myself 18 hours a day.
You'll see also the two ends of the spectrum that homeless people can feel. both the worry and the hurt to be considered someone scary or invisible or freeloading or untouchable. And really, I'm sorry the way that we started. But also the appreciation and the ease that happens from encounters where someone homeless can feel valued or understood or simply just like another human being. And we have stories in the book that I think you will appreciate reading. It's worth reading.
Here's one more thing you can do to help a homeless person. That's buy my book. I need the money.